Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, in the last few days or so, we've been hearing a lot of speculation in regards to Canelo Alvarez's next opponents. Right now, it seems like Jermall Charlo is in pole position to get this fight. And when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, it reminds me of Mayweather in the sense of it's almost like a sweepstake, like a lottery type scenario. And I do question these guys who are waiting around just hoping that Canelo Alvarez calls them to give them a career high payday. It seems like a lot of these guys at 160 and 168 aren't really willing to create their own legacy outside of Canelo Alvarez. More so, they would rather just wait and hope that Canelo Alvarez calls the phone to give them a career high payday. That's what it seems like to me personally. You know, I'm talking about guys like Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant, Demetrius Andrade, etc. These sort of guys. It just seems like they're hoping that Canelo gives them a call, and in the meantime, these guys are not willing to take any risks or take any hard fights, and we see that when these guys get in the ring with Canelo, they seem out of their depth and not ready. And quite frankly, with Jermall Charlo, I feel the exact same way. I'm not really excited by this potential fight. Now, Jermall Charlo is somebody who I've been watching for a long time. It's not like I've only been watching Jermall Charlo for a couple of years. No, I've been watching Jermall Charlo for quite some time. And at 154, I have to say, I was actually very excited by Jermall Charlo. Obviously, he won his title at 154 by beating Cornelius Bundridge, and he destroyed Cornelius Bundridge. He dropped him multiple times and stopped him, and I was very impressed with Jermall Charlo in that fight, considering, you know, Cornelius Bundridge was a guy who could make people look bad, but Jermall Charlo destroyed him and looked very good. And quite frankly, I was impressed with Jermall Charlo all throughout his 154 reign. He defended that title a few times. He beat Austin Trout, and at this point in time, Austin Trout was still a good fighter. And the big one for me was Julian Williams. He knocked out Julian Williams back in, I think it was the end of 2016, like December 2016. And going into that fight, many people were excited. It was two young, unbeaten Americans going at it, and many people were excited by that fight at the time. In fact, many people were actually picking Julian Williams, whether they admit it or not. But Jermall Charlo ended up knocking out Julian Williams in the 5th round of their fight, and at the time, I was mightily impressed. I saw a dynamic boxer-puncher with power, accuracy, you know, a bit of a killer instinct as well. I was very excited by Jermall Charlo at that point in time, and I felt to myself, this guy could develop into a really good fighter. And yeah, I was very impressed with Jermall Charlo in that Julian Williams fight. Look at that first knockdown. It was a counter right uppercut while Jermall Charlo was leaning back, and he timed Julian Williams in between his punches perfectly. And it was a great shot, it was a great knockdown, and a really hard shot to master, quite frankly. And yeah, at this point in time, I was very high on Jermall Charlo, and I felt that the sky was the limit. Shortly after that, Jermall Charlo decided to move up to middleweight, and that wasn't a surprise because Jermall Charlo was a very big 154 pounder. And going into the middleweight division with Golovkin and Canelo at the time, I was really excited, quite frankly. But once Jermall Charlo moved up to the middleweight division, he never really got those fights that would take him to the next level or hone his skills. You know, his first fight was against Jorge Sebastian Hyland, who was injured. And, you know, since then, his middleweight reign has been extremely mediocre. And in my opinion, his career progression has drastically suffered. I mean, honestly, I will defy anybody who says that Jermall Charlo is a better fighter now than he was in 2016 when he beat Julian Williams. In fact, I think Jermall Charlo's got worse. quite frankly. And I think that is due to Jermall Charlo's soft matchmaking in the last 5 years since he's been in the middleweight division. I mean, when you look at it, the only opponent he's fought worth a damn at middleweight in the last 5 years, half a decade, is Sergey Derevyanchenko. All of these other fights have been completely worthless, quite frankly. And against the likes of Brandon Adams, he looked absolutely horrific. Against Juan Macias Montiel, he didn't look great whatsoever. I mean, look at the Matvey Korobov fight. Korobov, who was training for an 8-rounder, he was a late replacement. And, you know, I think he came in at like 7-8 days notice, something like that. And he gave Jermall Charlo all he could handle. And this was a past his prime Korobov, an injury-ridden Korobov. And Jermall Charlo in that fight struggled mightily, made no adjustments in that fight whatsoever. And he was made to look quite basic, quite frankly. And yeah, for me personally, Jermall Charlo in recent years, I think his skill set has drastically regressed. He doesn't seem anywhere near as dynamic as he did at 154. And, you know, some of you Jermall Charlo skeptics out there are going to say, well, Del, that is because at 154 he had a huge weight advantage. And that is true. But go back and watch those fights. He looked quicker. He looked quicker off the draw, a better counter-puncher, much more accurate, better punch variety, punch placement. He looked so much better at 154, but in the last few years, man, he's just regressed into an average boxer puncher with good power. All he's really shown at middleweight is a jab, a good straight right hand, and a left hook. He doesn't really mix things up, doesn't put his punches together, doesn't adjust his game plan mid-fight or anything like that. It's the same thing, monotonous, over and over again. And against somebody like Canelo Alvarez, that's not going to be enough. That is bread and water for Canelo Alvarez, quite frankly. And you guys know I'm not a big Canelo fan. I don't particularly appreciate what he brings to boxing in regards to outside politics, judging, drugs, etc, etc. You guys know my feelings on Canelo, but regardless of that, Canelo, I'm still not going to say Canelo's a bad fighter. He's a very good fighter, extremely skilled, world-class, etc, etc. And Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, is light years ahead of Jermall Charlo in terms of skills, in terms of toughness, in terms of experience. You know, he's been there, seen it, done it. He's seen different styles. He's fought good guys. Whereas Jermall Charlo has been swimming in a sea of mediocrity in the last 5 years. And quite frankly, that does not prepare you for a fight of this magnitude. As we saw with Billy Joe Saunders, as we saw with Callum Smith, as we saw with Caleb Plant, and the exact same thing will happen with Jermall Charlo. He's going to go there with his hand out and get his paycheck. That's all he's there for. And I have no other reason to believe otherwise, quite frankly, because what he's done in the last 5 years is next to nothing. What's Jermall Charlo got to show for the last 5 years? A win over Derevyanchenko, and that's it. You know? And he's not shown the ambition to fight his fellow middleweights. Guys like Demetrius Andrade, who he could have fought. He was offered that fight for $7 million. And again, I don't know, I'm not sure what the contract entailed, but that's a lot of money. And you turned it down. This guy's shown no ambition to fight anybody else in his division. It just seems like he's been waiting around in the hope that Canelo calls him. And if that is the case, if I am right, he's going to get smashed to pieces. And I think I am right. So we shall see. We shall see. I'm not particularly high on the Jermall Charlo fight, quite frankly. I don't really have any faith in him whatsoever going into this fight. I think he's regressed as a fighter since 2016, since the Julian Williams fight. Again, go back and watch Julian Williams' Jermall Charlo. Do you think Jermall Charlo is the same fighter now than that he was then? I don't think he is. He's certainly not any better. That's one thing I think we can all agree on. He's not no better than he was then. He's not improved as a fighter in the last 5 years. So I'm not sold on this fight whatsoever. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Jermall Charlo is going to prove me wrong. If he does get this fight, we shall see. But share your thoughts below. What do you make of this potential fight? Am I being a doom and gloom merchant? Maybe I am, but share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.